Well, now at noon, the political world was stunned by the sudden death of longtime Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina this weekend. He was 71.
Senator Graham, who served for decades, was up for re-election this year. He became a close ally of President Donald Trump. And though he was no stranger to controversy, his death prompted tributes from both sides of the aisle. Governor Brian Kemp saying Graham was a true force to be reckoned with in Washington. Georgia U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock, who's a Democrat, called Graham a man of great faith. Representative Mike Collins, who is facing Democratic Senator John Ossoff at this year's midterms, also sent his condolences to Graham's family. Reed Binion has more on the tributes that continue to pour in.
All of us across South Carolina are shocked today. No one saw this happening.
The political world stunned by the sudden death of Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina.
To those who serve in the state legislature and in Congress today, he was our senior senator.
Condolences pouring in for Graham, not only from fellow Republicans, but also from Democrats.
It is hard to lose him.
And from world leaders.
Israel has lost one of the great champions of the American-Israeli alliance. And frankly, I've lost a beloved friend.
Graham died on Saturday just after returning from a visit to Ukraine. Citing preliminary findings from the Washington, D.C. Medical Examiner's Office, Graham's communications director released a statement saying he died following complications from cardiovascular disease. George Washington University professor of medicine and surgery, Dr. Jonathan Reiner, explains.
The innermost layer of the aorta is called the intima, and an aortic dissection is a tear in that innermost lining that allows blood to get into the actual wall of the artery.
Graham was up for re-election this year. Republicans must now find a candidate to replace him with a special primary on August 11th. In the meantime, South Carolina's governor can appoint a temporary replacement to fill Graham's vacant seat.
I told the governor this morning that I suggested that he should nominate himself. He can't do that. To be a sort of caretaker in between now and January 3rd.
I'm Reed Binion reporting.
So let's give you a look at the timeline of what comes next to fill the late Senator Lindsey Graham's seat. As you just heard them say, right now, the South Carolina governor can appoint a temporary replacement. Well, after that, July 21st through the 28th of the special Republican primary filing period, voters will then hold that primary on August 11th. And then come November 3rd in the midterm election, the winner of that primary will be on the ballot to officially fill the seat.